Another edition of of Riding Home. Used to be Roundtable, still is sometimes. Dean Legge and Matt DeBary. Matt, we've talked a lot over the years about how important quarterback play is, and today we're just going to spend a few minutes talking about Jake Fromm, a guy who really, to me, has developed a lot, and many, obviously has developed quite a bit actually, so much so that many people think he's a first round draft pick prospect, Heisman Trophy candidate for sure. And let's not lie. I mean, if he were to get hurt for whatever reason, Georgia would have some serious issues. But he's the linchpin for this team. I expect him to be the leader, I guess you could say, of the team. But what do you need from Jake Fromm, Matt, this fall for Georgia? Not just to win the SEC. He's done that before, but to win the national championship.
Well, that's really the only thing he hasn't done. He hasn't beaten Alabama and he hasn't won a national championship. He's basically done everything but that. So it's going to be that or bust. I feel like if you asked Jake, he would have said that last year too. I mean, the goal was to win a national championship last year, beat Alabama along the way, which is what they would have had to do, obviously. So that was the goal last year. It's going to be the goal this year. And like you said, he's most likely going to be a first-round pick unless he really regresses. And we've watched Jake progress in the past 3 years, so it looks like he could easily be a first-round pick. So this is it for Jake. This is the year that people are going to remember him by. And he's got to beat Florida again, go 3-0 against them, and beat Alabama and win that national championship. He can do it. He's got the offensive line. Receivers aren't as good as they were last year, but Jake Fromm is going to be better. He's got some running backs he can distribute the ball to. We know what DeAndre Swift can do, but he's going to be the leader of this team, and he's got what it takes. He's been the leader of this team 2 years in a row now. This is the year people are going to remember Jake Fromm for.
Well, if you look at the Heisman odds, which are Las Vegas odds, you've got Tua at 1, 11-4 odds, and then Trevor at 13-4 odds as the number 2. There's a three-way tie for third with Adrian Martinez at Nebraska, Jalen Hurts, Justin Fields. I would take Jake Fromm over all of those players with the exception of Trevor. And maybe I would take him over Trevor depending on the circumstance. I like him better. I've talked about this in the recent past. I like him better than I like Tua. I will plead ignorance to the quarterback at Nebraska, Martinez. He's better than Justin Fields. He's better than Jalen Hurts. I mean, he's definitely better than Jalen Hurts. So it is interesting to see from a national perspective, though. He is a guy that many people see as ready to be. If you're drafting a guy in the first round, you suspect he is a franchise quarterback. I'm not gonna hide the fact that the reality that I really did not see him as a franchise quarterback coming into his time at Georgia, but the world seemingly has changed a little bit. He just makes a lot of throws that result in scores.
And again, he doesn't necessarily wow you with his play like Deshaun Watson or Trevor Lawrence or a lot of these guys who have been picked in the first round, Baker Mayfield, but he does the right things. He can make the throws. He's accurate. He's durable. And again, he's smart. I mean, he came into Georgia ready to play, led him to a national championship as the leader of the team as a freshman. So someone's definitely going to take a chance on him. It seems like a lot of these NFL teams already have their quarterback for the future. There's still a few out there who will need one next year. There's going to be a lot to choose from, but one team is going to take a chance on Jake and hope that he can be their guy day one like he was at Georgia, or at least after that first game and before Notre Dame when it became his team.
Trevor, I think, is what you'd prototypically want in the NFL, but all the other guys that you mentioned have issues, and they still went in the first round. Whether you talk about Watson with durability, Baker with stature, same thing with Kyler Murray, just guys in general. I mean, the kid at Duke could very well be a very good player for the Giants, but there's been a lot of people lampooning that pick. Physically, Jake Fromm, if you just look at him on the hoof, as we say in the recruiting business, it's not a guy that he wows you with his arm necessarily. But he knows how to play football. And more what's happened in the league is we've gone away from saying a particular quarterback has to be a quarterback has to be a particular have particular measurables. If they can play, they'll go. when he was a freshman, I thought I was expecting more from him as a player, a person who not necessarily that made plays, but understood the game, played, etc. But what was going on was Georgia just didn't ask him to do a lot, essentially until the end of the year. I mean, he played well against Mississippi State. He played well, I thought, against South Carolina. But a lot of the 2017 season, they just didn't ask him to do a ton. And against Notre Dame, he did enough to get the job done. Last year, I mean, from the SEC championship game forward of 2017, maybe even the Georgia Tech game, he was hard to deal with. I mean, the way he played against Oklahoma was exceptional, I would say. And then obviously I thought he played pretty well against Alabama. Both times that he's played against Alabama, he's played pretty well. Did he make game-changing plays, good and bad, against Alabama in both games? Yes, but that sometimes is what happens with a quarterback. The quarterback is not always going to make decisions. The decision may be wrong, or you could have the correct decision and a bad throw. It's tough to play that spot. So with Fromm, you get steadiness. And I think with a program like Georgia, what is reliant on the run, we are always going to talk about quarterbacks. That's always going to happen. But he gives you steadiness, and that's something that you did not necessarily get from Jacob Eason his freshman year, although the circumstances were very different. And in many ways, you didn't get that from Aaron Murray. I mean, Aaron was really good. In fact, I would say in some ways he was a better playmaker than Jake Fromm, but he wasn't always steady. Am I wrong there? I mean, or am I only?
Well, I thought
Am I
Aaron Murray
only
was
thinking of the?
fantastic.
He was fantastic. He was
Even in
unbelievably
that
good.
freshman, they let him throw it out as a freshman. Where,
Yeah.
like Fromm, you had Sonny Michel and Nick Chubb. You didn't
Right.
want him, and you didn't need him to throw it either. So, Aaron Murray, I think, had the bigger arm too, and he was the guy. He didn't, have the guy in front of him get hurt to come in and this and that. So he had prepared, I think, to. I might be wrong there.
I don't think we've seen
I'm trying
Jake.
to think.
But
Yeah.
bro, listen, I love Aaron Murray. I'll go to the mat for Aaron Murray as a player. Georgia was a very good player at Georgia. He was a fighter. We just haven't. Part of what I'm saying is very nuanced too, though. Aaron was throwing it a lot. Jake does not, and so it can't be a total surprise. Well, it was pretty surprising though when it happened that Aaron's just tossing the ball to the Gators in the first half of games. I mean, people wanted to kill Aaron Murray.
Well, he was 3-1 against
he
Florida.
was excellent against the Gators. But what I'm saying is,
awesome.
Jake is always the fan base has sort of, in many ways, treated him with kid gloves. They've never really gotten after Jake Fromm. He didn't come in with gigantic expectations the way that obviously Jacob did, and to some degree the way that Justin Fields did. He's never had to deal with that burden of expectation. And here we are all of a sudden in what should probably be his final season at Georgia. And, I mean, I have to say, I think the expectation is to win the national championship. It's not a failure if you don't, but you've already done everything else.
He would say it is. I think the whole team would say it is. They would have said that last year. I feel like they did say it last year. It was a failure, especially when you go and you look at their performance in the Sugar Bowl.
Right.
But about the kid gloves, I think the fan base has really only gotten after Jake Fromm after that LSU game. The Auburn game was not his fault, but after LSU, they really started to get after him.
I stand corrected.
Yeah, but it wasn't after against Alabama freshman year. It wasn't after Alabama last year. He played really bad against Auburn, LSU, and Texas. They lost all those games. Played well enough to beat Alabama both times. I thought he did have the bad turnover in the national championship game. Yeah. Sometimes those things bounce the other way, but you can't put it on him. But he'll have this year. I mean, he's the quarterback. He's the leader, and I do think they're going to put up a lot of points. And this defense is going to be really good. So they're going into this season expecting to be undefeated, going into Alabama, and this year they have to beat Alabama. Jake Fromm needs to beat Alabama because that's really, again, the only thing he hasn't done.
I don't mean this in a dismissive way. But Clemson's beaten Alabama 2 of the last 3 times they've played. It's not like it's impossible to beat Alabama.
Right.
So,
That's why they have to do it.
I mean, so go ahead and handle your business, and you'll be fine. I mean, Auburn has split their last 2 games with Alabama. So if you're going to be the program that you should be, it's time. Now, there's no reason in whining about it for the 12 games before they play Alabama. You've still got to get to the SEC championship game, and everybody's assuming that Alabama will be there. But as we should expect. I mean, you can't know what's going to happen at the end of the rainbow. LSU could be there in theory. I seriously doubt it would be anyone else from the West, perhaps Auburn. That's tough for me to process with a freshman quarterback. But someone else could be there in theory. Maybe Texas A&M. I doubt that too. But it could be LSU, and Georgia would match up just fine with LSU. So it is a curious thing. People so much want to know what's going to happen before it happens. And, for Fromm, this schedule, Matt, breaks up to where it's manageable. It's tough at the end, for sure, but it's manageable. And these all are all games that are not just winnable for Georgia, but in theory, games they should win. And that a lot of that's going to fall on Fromm's ability to not even just not make mistakes, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, but again, this is it, and he's got the offensive line. That's what we know.
Yeah.
It's good. This is probably the best offensive line Georgia's had in a long, long time.
Yeah.
You match that up with a junior quarterback who should be going in the first round next year, you could have a special season.
You could. You lose Holloman, which is pretty stunning, but you can replace wide receivers. You don't want to replace left tackles.
Yeah, and we've said it on Dog Post for a while. George Pickens and Dominic Blaylock are going to play. I've seen Dominic Blaylock for 4 years. That kid's going to play this fall. So the talent's there. They're not super experienced. You do have a Demetrius Robertson, Tyler Simmons, right, Matt Landers, if he can step up. But the weapons are there. They might be young on the outside, but games are won in the trenches, and Georgia will match up well there with any team in the country.
Okay, that was just a quick rundown of Jake Fromm going into what should be his final season. Go over to dawgpost.com, dawgpost.com. $1 for a month right now. You just go sign up. It's $1. Check it out. See if you like it or not. And but you will, because Matt's there, right?
Right.
Dylan,
exactly.
All these geniuses, Air Force Dog, etc. Go check out the site. Hey, Matt, we'll see you. The next one, we're going to do a little bit of recruiting. So everybody stick around for that one. That will be out before the 4th of July.